What is going on, everyone? Today is December 5th, 2023. Welcome to the Invested in Hockey podcast. My name is Anthony Santini, joined here with
Eric Wilson.
Today we're talking hockey as per usual, everything that's happened in the last week and everything that might happen in the coming week, depending on how good we can predict it. And Eric had a tough week last week talking about predictions, 3 for 7, and we'll get to that later in the pod. But what's going on, bud?
Honestly, not too much. Although I had some bad predictions, I did pick my Bruins to beat the Leafs. We're going to get to that. I think it was a great week of hockey. I had a good week. Everything's busy. We're both in school. We got exams going on. But, great week. How about you?
Yeah, man, it's been a good week. A lot of stuff, like you said, with like exams. So it's been like tough to watch hockey and stuff per usual. You know, it's tough with school. But yeah, we were able to watch a couple good games. Saturday had a lot of good hockey. Friday kind of sucked because there's only 2 games on. I think it was like Ottawa, Columbus. So It wasn't the best hockey. But, I mean, to go back on that topic, like you said, the Bruins win in overtime against the Leafs. Marchand with a big overtime goal. And it's kind of, I don't know, for us Bruins fans, I know I might be a little bit of a diehard Matthews fan, so I can tend to cheer for the Leafs a little bit. But it's almost bittersweet to see Marchand score the overtime winner, especially after he did that, taking Liljegren out a couple weeks ago, and there's all this talk going on, and it's weird, right?
It's weird, but I mean, again, for me, that Bruins bias, it's great to see. At the end of the day, no one did much to Marshy that game. They didn't really touch him. We didn't see Reeves play a huge role. I think he had a big hit, which led to a 2-minute penalty there. But honestly, my emotions were rising that game. I mean, Matthews scored a few seconds left, and I was a little like, oh no, what's going to happen here? But I was not very impressed with the Leafs for that entire game. I was not impressed with the big four. I wasn't impressed with their depth. The only guy I can think of that actually is playing pretty well right now in that fourth line or third line role is Noah Gregor. And again, that's not a big name, so I don't know what to think of that.
Yeah, it's weird because usually when we talk about Stanley Cup championship teams, everyone's talking about the Leafs. Everyone wants to see the Leafs win a cup, but you don't see that depth on this year's team. Like, you got Gregor, you got Revo, who, I mean, I don't know. Like, he was an exciting signing in the summer, I guess. Everyone was excited to see him. He's a big personality. He's a good fighter, which is weird because we haven't seen him fight in, 10 games? He hasn't fought since Montreal, maybe, or if he fought, Foligno, I think, against Minnesota. I could be wrong. But it's like, what does he bring to the team? I'm not exactly sure. Gregor, like you said, has been playing well. He had that goal against Florida in that funky game, and then he had the game winner in the shootout to ice the game. Yeah. So he's been playing pretty well, but I don't know. Like you said, I wasn't really too impressed with the Leafs.
I guess I'll give credit where credit's due. Max Domi did score his first goal of the season. Nasty breakaway goal. I can't really again, I'm going to acknowledge that just because it was pretty nice. I think that tied the game, or I guess they were down by 1 or something. But again, kind of just to defend my Bruins there, they got the job done. It wasn't maybe the prettiest win, but goal by David Pastrnak on Joseph Wall there. I don't think he looked great, but he played okay. He kept the Leafs in the game. But yeah.
Yeah, it's weird right now for the Leafs because there's been so much buzz around them talking that they only have 6 regulation wins, which is actually, I believe, less than the Arizona Coyotes, which if you were to tell yourself in the middle of July that the Arizona Coyotes would have more regulation wins than the Toronto Maple Leafs going into the new year, or close to heading into the new year, you almost wouldn't believe it. It's like, what are you talking about? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's what's happening right now, and the Leafs are pulling points. They're pulling 1 point. They got a point against the Bruins. They almost lost the game against Florida. I think the Kraken, they went to overtime too, or even shootout they went to. So it's weird because this team, they don't look amazing. They're not winning games in regulation. But I guess it's a positive because they're finding ways to get points.
They're in a playoff spot, and I guess at the end of the day, it's like you make the playoffs and you go from there. I don't know if their playoff matchup's going to be more favorable if they finish high in that division. It's weird to say, but you look at Tampa, who I think is in the first wild card spot right now, right? So they'll be playing the number 1 team in the Atlantic, right? Most likely. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, it could be one of those years where they don't go against Tampa. So like you said, interesting for sure, not a doubt. And yeah, any team going against the Leafs is much watch hockey for sure. I know we were chatting a little bit around the house. Our buddy Georgie was speaking about the Leafs and the question kind of got brought up, does the NHL revolve around the Leafs? And it's a topic of discussion. I don't believe so, but you got to think they're one of the biggest franchises right now, and for good reason. I mean, they do have some of the top players, maybe not playing the best hockey right now, but come March, they should be humming and ready to chase their first Stanley Cup in a very long time.
For sure. Again, like I was saying, make the playoffs and go from there. It's we're I guess 1/3 into the season almost, just past the quarter mark. So lots of hockey left. But to finish the talk on Ryan Reeves, there, I think it's a really interesting conversation about whether he's going to be in a Leaf uniform for 3 years. When you look at other guys, you see John Klingberg with a 1-year contract. So a lot of question marks there.
Yeah, a question mark for sure. And Reeves, who is supposed to be defending teammates and kind of bringing that grit aspect to the Leafs hockey, we haven't really seen it too much. And to talk about another player that a team is playing well, the Philadelphia Flyers, we saw Konechny, who is one of the, dare we want to say, top 25 players in the NHL right now. Definitely a top 15 forward in my book, I think.
I think you could say top 30 maybe. Definitely top 25 is fair to say, I think.
Yeah, but to go out on a limb almost the way he's playing this year. And we saw him get slashed a couple games ago and a 2-game suspension for Brendan Smith. And Brendan Smith, who brought that grit in a, what do we want to say, dare to say, like an aggressive way to Konechny? Like, did you see that? That was ridiculous.
I don't know what the word is for that. Just not smart. Not smart
at all. It's like, what's the reasoning behind that? What do your coaches think? So for those of you that did not see this clip, Brendan Smith of the New Jersey Devils, I don't know if he's a rookie, second year. He could be a 50. I've never heard of
he's
him,
pretty old now. He's like 30, but he's brothers with Riley Smith.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. But, yeah, I don't know. You would think 30-year-old guy, been in the league for a little bit, you can make a little bit of a better decision. But obviously he must have been rattled. So he was coming down the boards, the New Jersey side, and it looked like Konechny gave him a little shove, which, it does happen in the league. It happens all the time. It's not uncommon. People want to get under your skin. And he comes, winds up, and just whacks him right like the elbow area, the bicep area. Like, it was definitely intent to injure. And to kind of build off that topic, does the NHL need to look at something like this and say, we really need to crack down on when our players are getting injured, if they are getting injured, and when other players are looking to hurt other players? Because to me, that was intent to injure.
Yeah, I think the obvious answer is yes, but the hard question to answer is how. How are you going to do that? Are you going to increase suspensions, or are you going to increase fines, which we know fines don't really do much, right? So it's really interesting to see a guy like Brendan Smith. He's not really a repeat offender, I'd say. I remember his days on the Red Wings, I think the Rangers, right? Like those two teams I remember on, and he can fight. He doesn't do too much in the defensive or offensive end, but I think the number one thing to say is, like, Konechny is a guy that is going to get under your skin, but no matter who you're playing against, whether it's Philly, who a lot of teams don't like, you can't be doing that. There's no excuse.
Yeah, no excuse for sure. And like you said, maybe the opportunity of raising the fines. I know that was a topic as well. I don't remember exactly what it was, but they were chatting about, you know what it was? It was the Truba's hit.
Yeah.
Or Truba's slash, almost, if you want to call it, on
Frederick, maybe?
Frederick.
Yeah.
And he got fined the quote-unquote maximum.
Oh, yeah.
And would you guess what the maximum is? $5,000.
What? I was going to say 25,000, but is it 5? That's crazy.
So for me, it's like, Trouba must make what, 6 mil, 7?
Oh, probably,
maybe?
yeah.
Probably a little bit
call
more,
it 6+, yeah.
Right? Just off the top of my head. How is that the maximum? Like, that's the difference between a night out and buying a couple bottle of wines for these guys or not. Like, these guys spend money. A $5,000 quote-unquote maximum fine is not going to do much, and it's not going to make a big difference in the league. We saw in the NFL, Amon St. Brown got fined, I think it was like $50,000 for a celebration on last Sunday's game, I believe, just going off the top of my head.
Oh, yeah.
Not a big football guy as much anymore, but that is what you need to do. And he even tweeted out and said, this was like a big chunk of my contract, or whatever he said. He said, like, I need a loan or something. He made some sort of joke saying that this is a sizable fine. And I really think the NHL needs to crack down on stuff like that.
Yeah, and he's not going to do it again because he knows better, right? And Yeah, it's a really interesting topic, the whole Truba thing. Yeah, we've seen a lot of those slashes, but not as much. Another thing away, a bit talking more about injuries and things like that. We've seen a guy like Luke Hughes get absolutely trucked a few times. One was by Truba, I think, but the other happened, I think, last week by Garnett Hathaway. I don't know if you remember that hit.
Yeah.
Hits are obviously part of the game, but when you see hits that are late, anything that can injure guys, obviously you want to protect the young guys and the stars, but at the end of the day, anyone in the NHL should be protected just as much as Connor McDavid, right? It's
Yeah,
you got to be
no,
fair. Everyone's a
100%.
hockey player. Everyone's here to be a human as well. So
100%. You see it to go back on the NFL, and like I hate comparing leagues, but they protect their quarterbacks like it's nobody's business. Mahomes gets hit, flags come flying, he throws his arms up, and you almost want to see that in the NHL where your players are protected, like you said, McDavid, McKinnon, Matthews, Makar, goalies, Vasilevsky, all these guys are going to be protected. If these guys get injured, you're in big trouble.
yeah,
Right? Like these guys really bring in the money. And on the other spectrum of it is the younger guys that bring in the money as well. And we saw Luke Hughes get pummeled in the corner. Like it looks like he struggled a little bit. And it brings up the question that are these younger defensemen able to protect themselves against some of these bigger veterans like we talked about, players like Ryan Reeves that make a living in the corners and just burying these guys, dumping chase, just all kinds of good stuff. So Luke Hughes has been playing well, but I have seen a lot of videos of him getting hit pretty hard. It looks like Dougie Hamilton's going to miss some time. So it brings up the question, can Luke Hughes be given the keys to that power play? And we saw Simon Nemec, who got called up and played his first NHL game with 2 assists.
yeah, it's a great topic there with young defensemen. I think a lot of people forget that this Nemec kid went second overall in the 2022 NHL draft. Defensemen are a huge topic. Obviously, that team has Hughes, Hamilton, Nemec, a guy like Seamus Casey even, who's I think from the 2022 draft as well. But it's a really good question about a guy like Nemec. Is he going to live up to that second overall hype? We don't know that draft well enough yet, but the only other defenseman in that range was David Juracek being drafted 5th overall, and I think he's played, call it, 25 games in the NHL. He looks okay. Nemec obviously has only played a game. He looked comfortable. I believe he's a right shot. You can probably confirm with me there, but
I think he's actually a left shot.
maybe he is a left shot. Yeah. I guess Dougie's the right shot. Maybe I was thinking about, but yeah, he looked good.
No, he's a right shot.
Okay,
Sorry.
he is. Yeah, so that's pretty huge in my eyes, at least. When you look at defensemen, there's not a lot of right shots out there. We see when teams are missing that right shot, for example, that Avs are missing Cam Makar, there's a right shot. They're gonna have to pull in Devontae's, who's a left shot. It's gonna change the power play. But with that team, with the Devils, I don't mind Nemec there, and maybe he's gonna see some power play 2 time. I don't know. I really love Nemec. I think that he could live up to that second overall hype, but it brings up the question about, do you draft the best player available, or do you draft the best position that you're looking for?
I think that question kind of it stems into a couple draft classes, right? Because I know you just touched on Nemec, but it kind of brings me to the Owen Power situation as well. And going back on Nemec, I know there was some good players available like Logan Cooley, Shane Wright, Cutter Gauthier, and then another defenseman, Juracek, and then Korchinski, who's been having a pretty decent year with Chicago as well. But a lot of options were on the board, and it looked like at the time, I don't know, that first 2 picks for me, I remember watching the NHL draft. I was thinking it's Shane Wright all day, right? Number 1. And then he doesn't go to Montreal.
Yeah, it was
He
just
doesn't go to
crazy.
New Jersey. He doesn't go to Arizona. And I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but he said something. He said something to his dad, like, "Oh, I'm going to Arizona." Do you remember that? Where
No,
they thought
really?
that they caught him saying, "I guess it's Arizona," after
Wow.
he didn't get picked second.
Wow.
Something crazy like that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it almost doesn't make sense. But to go back on that question that you did ask, it does make sense in terms of go after the players that you need. And I totally agree. If New Jersey felt like, you know what, yeah, there is this all-star potential, Shane Wright, winger, could play center. He's been playing well. Even though he is available, we need a defenseman. Let's address our issues. And I feel like it's one of those things where you see a shiny new toy and you're like, oh, It could be nice to have, but it's not what we need right now. And I don't think New Jersey at the time was in a spot to take Shane Wright or Cooley or Gauthier. So they go with their guy Nemec. He looked great in his first 2 games, and it looks like he's going to keep playing with the team.
Yeah, exactly. That's the good news is you want guys to stay there. You want guys to get comfortable in the locker room. One draft I want to go back to is the 2010 draft, and it makes me question, like, I don't think that there used to be this issue of are you drafting the best player or are you drafting the best position? This draft back in 2010 had Taylor Hall and Tyler Seguin, who were both like elite prospects, and it pretty much was like either of them could have gone number one. Now, they both had the bit of like center eligibility. Taylor Hall was known as kind of a left wing, and Seguin was known as a bit of a center, but they both were able to kind of be flexible. And Edmonton ended up taking Taylor Hall over Tyler Seguin. Boston got Seguin at 2, and it looked fine. There were no issues. It was kind of like, okay, it could have been flopped, but they're both going to be superstars. We saw Hall won a Hart Trophy. Seguin had some great years with 80-plus points.
Won a cup.
But I just never really saw this issue until, call it, the 2018 draft, where maybe as you get older, you watch the drafts a little closer. And I don't know if you remember this, but the year where Philip Zadina went pretty high to Detroit, I remember them talking at the draft about how that pick was strictly because Detroit needed a winger. I don't know if you remember that at all, but it brings up like the Makar draft where Heiskanen was taken. It's like you never really know how the draft's going to go, right?
Yeah, everyone has their own personal rankings, right? It brings me to like fantasy drafts. Although players might be ranked at a certain number, one guy's 9, one guy's 10, you have to draft the guys you like. If you have the 4th overall pick and you've never watched Shane Wright, or sorry, if you have the 2nd overall pick and you've never watched a good game out of Shane Wright, but everyone's been talking about him, you need to trust your staff and you need to trust the people you hired. And maybe they didn't like, and I hate to keep bringing up Shane Wright because Logan Cooley's having such a fantastic year, but I'm only bringing it up because this was the biggest topic at the time. You need to go with the guys that you trust. And to piggyback again on another topic is the Buffalo Sabres when they drafted Owen Power. They took him 1st overall, and you can't pass up on a superstar potential line 1 defenseman, especially a big body like Owen Power on that blue line.
For sure. And I think just to wrap up that conversation around the draft, the last kind of note I want to make, I mentioned Zadina there, and in that draft class, Jesperi Kotkaniemi was taken third overall. That was a huge awe to the draft crowd. And again, I think the consensus there was Montreal wanted a center. They saw elite potential in Kotkaniemi. They thought, okay, this guy can be our future number 1 center. I don't think they had Suzuki at the time. I don't know if they did, but they took him over Brady Tkachuk. They took him over Quentin Hughes. Who knows who they were thinking of? But again, Brady Tkachuk can't play center, so it's a huge difference, right? You have to look at these players and say, okay, do you fit into our lineup in 5 years? Do we want you? There's so many things we don't know as viewers too.
Yeah, as viewers, it's so easy to just I'm looking at this ranking right now and I'm saying why would X player go before X player? It's just so easy to say oh, this guy's having an amazing season. Why was he not drafted 2 spots before? Maybe your team didn't need that. And I hate to bring up the 1st overall draft pick again from this draft, but Yaroslav Slavkovsky, I haven't liked how he played so far. I think it's a big mistake that he's playing most of his NHL games in his 1st and 2nd season.
Yes.
And I want to bring up this topic of Montreal because I'm just disappointed in the last 5 years of how everything has really gone down. They made the Stanley Cup final. They beat the Leafs, right, in the playoffs. They make the Stanley Cup finals. The next year, they're the worst team in the NHL.
Yeah. I don't know how it's been. I think it's been maybe 3 years. But yeah, I can agree with you with the last 5 years. Tell me if I'm wrong here, but ever since Jonathan Drouin fell off, I don't think there's been much good things out of Montreal.
There hasn't been a lot of good things out of Montreal at all. They made that cup. It was an amazing cup run. Unfortunately, there's everything that's going on with Carey Price, and he hasn't been able to come back to the team. There's not a lot of rumors swirling around, which I think is awesome because for his sake, there's nothing worse than rumors and for people to talk about.
Yeah,
his
we don't need
personal
that.
business.
Yeah,
you definitely don't need that without a doubt. And from drafting Slavkovsky, from going to the Stanley Cup, and then you're the worst team in the NHL the year after, And then now all these injuries that have happened this year. It looks like Newhook's going to be month to month. I think it was 9 to 12 weeks.
Yeah, that'll be a while for Newhook. Every young guy on that team, like, you don't know where they stand in a month from now. It's a little interesting, but I think to kind of build a bit of positive light here, Caulfield and Suzuki, we know where they stand, and I think they're going to continue to be 60-plus point guys for that team going forward. I think those two are the guys you can rely on. Unfortunately, I don't think on the defensive end you can really rely on a guy like Mike Matheson long term. He's great.
He has been playing well, though. He
Yeah.
has been playing well.
He's been great, but I think you're going to have to bring up the young guys to step up more. I think what's the guy on Montreal who's supposed to be pretty good one day? Lane Hudson. I think they have Lane Hudson who might be their
Well,
stud
they have some
D.
good prospects coming up.
Yeah,
too. They
yeah,
have
and
some
then
good
you have
prospects.
Gooley who's been playing pretty well. But in
Yeah.
terms of like a PP1 defenseman, best defenseman on the team, I wouldn't be surprised if Lane Hudson's that guy in 3 years from now, right?
Yeah.
Who knows? But yeah, definitely a good chat about the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, it's a weird spot that Montreal's in right now because they shouldn't be going for the cup. Should they be going for the first overall pick? Should they be tanking? They still have some young guys. Like Caulfield's in his, fifth season now or fourth season even? Like, it feels like he's been in the league for a while because he was with them on that Stanley Cup run.
Yeah.
So it brings up the question, when is this rebuild going to start eating into Caulfield's prime, right? Because he's a player that they have high hopes for. And like we said, Newhook's injured, Kirby Doc's injured. This season looks like a write-off. They're pretty happy with Montembeau in net. It looks like they signed him to a 3-year deal.
Good news for sure.
Great news, actually, because they're picking their guy, their goalie in net. They trust him, and they want to ride with it, which I can always appreciate. If you, like we saw with Nino Niederreiter, he gets paid 3 years, $4 million by Winnipeg, and pay your guys. Big topic of discussion.
Yeah, and I really love the idea of believing in your goalies. We actually had a podcast a couple of weeks ago where I loved the idea of believing in Jeremy Swayman for the Bruins, and I said, listen, you give him his $8 million, and I know that sounded like a lot, and I had a lot of hate from a couple of our viewers at home there, but I truly believe in the success of a goalie tandem as well. We both weren't goalies, but from what I've heard, goalies play the best when they have a good relationship with their goalie partner. I hate to bring out the Bruins, but again, Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark probably have the best relationship in terms of goalies that is evident on the ice, right, with those goalie hugs. I think that the idea in Montreal is that Montembeau can be the guy, and then you have Caden Primo who can try and make that backup role for the next 2 seasons. I think he's already 23, 24 now. But when you think long-term, there's no answer in that right now, but I think that's the hope for Montreal.
Yeah, that's the hope for now. And when you look forward, you don't really know. There's a couple question marks for Montreal, what it's going to look like. When you look back, there was always question marks for Montreal because it was like they weren't really supposed to go to the Stanley Cup final. Everyone was kind of surprised by that run. But when you look at Carey Price, it was like, hey, we're not surprised he's playing the best hockey ever because he's one of the best goalies of all time. But this 23-24 season, we look at the Philadelphia Flyers, and a big surprise is how well they've performed not only in their division, but just overall. And they're third in the Metro right now, sitting pretty in a playoff spot, chilling.
Oh, yeah.
I just don't think that they're going to be able to sustain this type of success.
Yeah, honestly, I think we talked about it maybe a couple weeks ago and how it's the one team to kind of fade when it's about making the playoffs or not. But it is so interesting, like that division. I don't know what to think of it because you have Columbus at the bottom, who should stay relative to the bottom. There's no surprise there. Then you've got kind of like the Devils, who I don't know. I'm not a big fan of them, but they should trend up. That's kind of what everyone should say is they should trend up. Jack Hughes is back. His stats are ridiculous. I think 25 points, 18 games. And then as you go up the charts, there are a lot of question marks, like Pittsburgh, the Isles, Washington Capitals, who lost 6-0 last night to Connor Ingram.
Embarrassing.
It's like question marks. So
yeah, too many question marks can lead to, not a lot of success in this NHL. And I think the biggest thing that can stem from the Philadelphia Flyers' success is some of their young players stepping up, especially Carter Hart in net, who he hasn't really made a big splash this year or in the NHL. I know he had a good season, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
I believe it was 2019-20 season or 20...
Yeah, I don't know if it was a full season. I don't know. He played well, but a lot of those like fans will say, okay, he's never stemmed and broken out yet. It's a little interesting. Like
there's definitely a lot of room for him to grow, and this year it looks like there is success. And looking at that coach, John Tortorella, it brings up the question for me. Is John Tortorella the best, worst coach in the NHL? And I mean that with all due respect. I love Tortorella. I love what he provides for a team. But for the Philadelphia Flyers, I think that they're in a position right now where they shouldn't be pushing for a playoff spot. And that's exactly what they're doing. That's what we're seeing right now. And it's almost a little bit disappointing to see some of the fans send letters saying, why are we not tanking? Why are you trying to win games? And Tortorella, it's kind of funny. He came out to the media and abolished the idea of tanking. And I have a lot of respect for him, not only as a coach, but as a person to say that to people.
Oh, yeah.
But the Philadelphia Flyers definitely look good this season.
Exactly. The respect piece, I don't think you can ever tell a hockey team that you are supposed to lose. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. Sure, there's going to be the indirect, okay, this team's better than us on paper and they have a better chance to win, but guess what? It's a brand new hockey game out there. When it's 0-0 on the scoreboard, you just can't say, okay, we're going to lose. The worst, most toxic thing in hockey is having a losing atmosphere. You don't want to be in a losing locker room. You don't want to be around players that are content to lose, because at the end of the day, any guy who wants to win should be disappointed after a loss. It doesn't matter if it's a 2-1 loss or a 5-1 loss.
See, the question for me is, if you're the Flyers management, wouldn't you want, like, it sounds so funny to say, but wouldn't you want to bring, like, a losing environment to the organization just for now? Like, you don't want to win these games. If the Flyers lose in the first round, they're going to end up with, like the 16th pick overall or 18th, something like that. And if they just slightly miss the playoffs, we saw it with the Buffalo Sabres last year, you're in a position where you're still in a heavy rebuild, right?
Yes, but you can't say that. I disagree. You can't say you have. I don't agree with the losing atmosphere piece because
I'm not saying bring a losing atmosphere, but you don't want to bring like a guy in Tortorella where he demands excellence from a team, because he's not showing up to practice at 8 a.m. saying, yeah, guys, let's put some pucks in the corners. Let's do like some cycles, some, defense walk the blue line. Like, no, he's yelling at these players. He wants them to go. And if you can't go, then get the out of here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And we both have the respect there, but you almost can't. You got to, as Torts, like we've seen, he's been a coach for many different teams, and it's almost like you're all in or you're not, right? Like, I think he wants the best for these young guys. Call it, Tyson Forrest or Owen Tippett, guys who haven't been in a playoff spot before, never played a playoff game. So it's almost like, listen, you put all of this energy in, and at the end of the day, when you look at this, call it 5 years down the road, even if they have the 15th overall pick, that guy could turn out better than the guy that was drafted 5th overall. You just can't have a losing environment and like tank. I don't think it's worth it. But it's a really good debate we've had there with the Philadelphia Flyers. So all due respects there, Sans.
Yeah, big debate. And, it is interesting because when you do bring an atmosphere that is positive or negative, and it looks like Tortorella is bringing a positive contribution to that team, you do want to benefit everyone. And I know Eric wants to chat a little bit about benefiting the podcast and kind of chatting with people and collaborating a little bit. So Eric, if you want to take it from here.
Yeah. So honestly, guys, it's been, call it 7 episodes now. And we've had a lot of fun doing it with each other, but we would love to bring in some viewers, whether you're from Ontario, whether you're from Canada, the States. We don't play hockey competitively anymore ourselves, but we love to bring in, call it a junior hockey player, call it a hockey coach, whether you're a young kid watching the podcast, pretty much any audience that can, we want to give someone an opportunity, but we also want to try and grow the podcast ourselves. So feel free to reach out to us. We're on, call it 5 platforms now, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. So there's a lot of ways to reach us. Honestly, talking hockey is pretty great. So feel free to do that. Send us a message, and we'll try and collaborate. So appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a great idea to collaborate. We're looking to chat with some people, chat hockey, have some viewers, have anyone on the podcast. It's always fun to talk. But something that wasn't fun last week was Eric's predictions. And Eric Wilson, you went 3 for 7 last week. What do you have to say?
I know you're going to get into each game a little bit, or maybe not, but the number one thing is that, like, I don't know what to say other than the Capitals sold me on both my picks. I believed in them in the wrong game when they lost 6-0, and I didn't believe in them when they somehow beat the Kings. I think that was a tough week to predict because you put the Capitals in 2 of those games. I think I'm almost better at predicting a good game like the Oilers Jets game, where I know I know I was wrong there, but that was a good game until Draisaitl scored that goal to seal the deal there.
Yep.
I'd love to be better this week. I think 7 for 7 will happen one day, but I would love to hear those predictions. So yeah.
Yep. So to start us off on December 5th, today, Tuesday, we're going to go the New York Rangers at the Ottawa Senators.
Okay. I've showed a lot of belief in the Ottawa Senators in the past, and it's gone on to haunt me. But, like, the Sens are going to take this game. There's not much to it other than, like, it's time to show up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that division is going to get out of hand at some point, and you don't want to be at the bottom.
They do, however, they've only played, I think, 19 or maybe 20 games now.
Yeah.
So they do have some games in hand, but it's going to be a tough division to kind of play catch-up with because you're playing some of the best teams in the NHL.
Yeah, you're playing the Sabres a lot. Tage Johnson's back, like things like that. Like there's not going to be an easy schedule ever. So I'm going to go with the Sens to start it off tonight.
Nice pick. All right, next up on Wednesday, we have the Pittsburgh Penguins at the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Honestly, I'm going to go with Tampa. I think this is when they kind of turn it around a little after the tough loss in Dallas. They had a great game last night. Vasi with a shutout. I got him on my fantasy team, so a little biased there, but let's go Tampa.
Oh, yeah, we're playing fantasy against each other, so could be some big implications.
Yeah,
if
big week.
Vasilevsky could have some good games. That might be a little bit disappointing. But
exactly.
On Thursday, December 7th, we have the Buffalo Sabres at the Boston Bruins.
Buffalo at Boston. I mean,
it's a pretty easy pick here.
It's an easy pick, but like it's actually like the reverse kind of psychology here. The Sabres are going to take that one. Tage is back. Tage is back.
No. Oh, no.
No, like, again, we might have to clip this, but Tage is back, and honestly, Buffalo's going to look amazing for some reason. If you look at the Sabres versus the Bruins last 20 games, I think the Bruins have won 17 of the 20, maybe 18 of the 20, to be honest. But let's go Sabres there. It sucks to say that, but I'm just feeling it. I don't know
Fair
why.
enough. I feel like you got me there with Tage Thompson coming back. You never know what he could bring back to the locker room, and we know what he could bring, that offensive spark to a team.
Yeah.
So, the Bruins might drop a couple games, but headed to Friday, we have the Edmonton Oilers facing the Minnesota Wild, two teams that are kind of just struggling this year.
You got to go with the Oilers there. I never really believed in the Wild to be like a powerhouse. I know some people had the Wild like winning that division. I just never have seen them as that powerhouse. Even those years when they had a couple runs, they never really made it past the Blues or the Avalanche. It's been a rough run for the Wild, and I think it continues till the end of December.
Yep. Saturday, we have the Nashville Predators at the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Honestly, the Leafs have done me well in these predictions. At least we're going to take that one over the Preds.
Sweet. And then we have the San Jose at the Vegas Golden Knights. And I'm only running this back because I remember in September you said that the San Jose Sharks were going to get their first win against Vegas, but they got it against, was it?
Edmonton. They got it against
Was it Edmonton?
Wasn't it?
I think so. You're probably right. I trust you.
Yeah.
But I remember that you were pretty confident, so I'm curious what you have to say here.
Okay. It's a little weird because the Sharks have been playing some great hockey.
They haven't played.
I've watched a lot of Sharks games recently, like whether it's at the bar.
They're all the late games.
Yeah,
right?
It's like you're at the bar having a beer, and then
it's like the only game that's on.
You see Mikhail Granlund just with a nasty sauce over to Anthony Duclair, and it's like they beat the Devils. Like I don't know, they've been playing well, but they've been playing too well, and I think Vegas takes this one.
All right.
It is a little notable to note that Aiden Hill is out, but I think Logan Thompson can get the job done. If not, their backup.
Nice. To finish us up here, wrapping the podcast off, is the Calgary Flames at the Colorado Avalanche. Note that Markstrom has been placed on the LTIR, I believe, and they have recalled Dustin Wolf today. So not sure if Wolf or Vladar will be getting that start, but...
let's go Avs, baby. Let's go Avs.
Nice. So the Colorado Avalanche, who I have right now as my Stanley Cup pick. Eric, who's yours to end this podcast?
Oh, I don't know if I can leave that on the end of this podcast.
Oh, all right.
I'm gonna leave a little
gonna
suspense.
save it. I like it.
I'm not ready to make a Stanley Cup prediction. I made one at the start of the season, I believe, but I don't know if I made a President's Trophy winner or a Stanley Cup prediction. So I'm gonna have to go back to that. We actually didn't have this podcast going at the start of the year, so
no.
I'm gonna leave that in a little bit of a suspense topic for our viewers. But yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, I appreciate everyone for listening. Thank you, Eric, for joining me. It was a great week of talking hockey with you, and I'm excited to look forward to next week of hockey, watching a little bit of hockey tonight, and whatever the podcast brings.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Thank you, Anthony.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.